Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Screens, a show where we get to know some of social media's most interesting personalities. Today on the show, we have a personal friend of mine and one of my favorite people in the world. He is one half of Ian Sane Productions. He was a host at the Ottawa Burlesque Expo, and he is Ottawa's sparkliest man. I'd like to introduce to you my friend, Ian Sane.
Thank you so much, Anja. This is my tiny dog, Blitz, who will be joining us on and off throughout the interview. As Anja said, I'm Ottawa's sparkliest man. I'm a burlesque MC and producer here in town. I host at shows all over the city, and I host for Ian Sane Presents with Victoria, of course.
Amazing. So how are you today, Ian?
I'm pretty well today, just hanging out in my fancy clothes at home. I mean, I think everyone in the community has to own at least one piece of leopard print clothing.
Oh,
It's
yes.
a law almost.
Oh, and on special occasions, you can wear more than one type of leopard print in an
Oh,
outfit.
yeah. This is actually my newest rhinestoning project right here. It's not in a dark and smoky room right now, so it's not shining quite like it should. But there are a ton of rhinestones on here. Maybe if it gets a little darker out as the evening goes on, you'll get a chance to see it really go. I miss walking down the street in rhinestone suits. Way dirtier looks when you're wearing like a full like COVID-19 like mask. Good to go. Yeah, kids don't like you as much.
No, I don't think so. All right, so Ian, our first segment is our Backstage Blitz, and we're going to ask you some icebreaker questions that I will be pulling out of this jar, and you're going to try to answer the best that you can. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Sounds good to me.
All right, let's go. I got to shake this up really well. Okie dokie. Here you go. First question. Haha, this is a good one. What's something that you're good at, but you are kind of embarrassed that you are good at?
That is a good question. I try not to be embarrassed of anything I'm good at, because if you're good at something, it's usually worth showing off. I used to be more embarrassed. I'm a huge nerd, and I know just all kinds of nerd stuff generally tucked in my head. And I used to be embarrassed about being an obnoxious trivia kid, but now trivia is popular, so it worked out for me. Yeah, I wouldn't have bothered getting good at it if I was embarrassed to do so.
Keep that energy. I like that energy. Ian's not embarrassed is the short version of that answer. All right, second question. Ha. What could you give a 40-minute presentation on with absolutely no preparation?
Dungeons and Dragons. And it would be a lot longer than 40 minutes. I think we could throw an hour or two on that without much of a
Oh my
problem.
God.
Well, you got to go between all 5 different editions plus the other ones. Yeah, I could talk about D&D forever.
If I ever need to do a 5-hour live stream about something, I will call Ian to talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
I would be happy to do so.
All right, let's go for our third and final question. This one's good. I can feel it. I feel the energy coming off of this one. If I bought you a billboard in Times Square and gave you 6 words to sell yourself, what would you write?
Oh, I have to count and figure out words. Yeah, making me do math and words at the same time. That's the true count. I can do both.
English
just not
and math.
That's fine. I was gonna say men can be shiny too, but uh, that's only 5. I need another one. Comma bitch. There we go. Men can comma bitch. That would be my billboard. I would switch shiny from sparkly.
I
Men
love
can be
it.
sparkly to comma bitch. Yeah, that's it.
Money well spent. Great answer. So we are now ready for our next segment, which is the main event. I'm going to ask you some deeper questions to get to know you a little bit better and also about the journey you've been on throughout your career. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do this.
Okay. So, Ian, when you got started as an MC, you booked your first gig without ever having held a microphone. How does that even happen?
So I started hosting Burlesque in in late July of 2016. It was for my best friend's birthday party, Victoria Vermouth. She'd been performing on the scene for about, I want to say, 9 or 10 months at that point, just shy of a year. And it was her first birthday, happening while she was a burlesque performer. And I'd been attending a ton of her shows and been hanging out and just really getting to know the burlesque community kind of in general at that point. So I went to Headmistress Holly, who ran an Evening of Sin at that point in time. And I asked her if I could throw Victoria a birthday show there. She agreed. And when I offered to host it, she also agreed. I didn't just walk onto the stage with the microphone. I asked her several months beforehand, and there was some
Yeah.
rhinestoning and material worked on before I hit the stage itself. But it was the first time I'd ever performed. Yeah.
That's a super cool story. Now, did you have any obstacles like leading up to that point?
I haven't really had many obstacles in my burlesque career. I showed up on a time in the scene when there weren't a lot of other hosts working. Several hosts had retired, and most of the regularly working hosts weren't available to do weeknight shows. So just kind of by virtue of living near all the burlesque shows and being available during them, I ended up getting called into an Evening of Sin 3 or 4 times in a row in fall of 2016. Just because people had bailed on Holly or were sick that night or couldn't make the show. So I ended up hosting 3 or 4 shows right in a row. And at the end of the 4th show, Holly just offered me a job right on stage in front of everyone without even bothering to ask me first. Of course, I agreed, though. It was too much fun not to.
That's amazing. I think the most important thing is showing up, right?
Yeah, well, it's much easier to host a show when you are there. Yeah, it's always bad when the guy who introduces people doesn't show up. It gets very confusing very quickly. And then after I got a permanent spot at Evening of Sin, I started working the other shows in town because I had done like 10, 12. I had the experience to take on some of the bigger stages.
That's awesome. I would say that you're probably one of the most bookable talents in Ottawa.
Yes, I think I was the busiest burlesque host in Ottawa for 2017, 2018, and most of 2019. I ended up doing about 50 shows a year, I think.
Wow.
But I have since cut it back to about 20 because that was way too much. That's a good way to
That's a
practice
lot.
right. Yeah, it's a good way to practice right at the start of your career and get a ton of experience really early. But after a certain point, you just realize you're telling the same joke again and again. You need to retreat a bit and work on some more stuff.
So, Ian, these days there's a lot of talk about toxic masculinity. How do you reckon with that as a man introducing burlesque acts before they come onto the stage?
I think that that's a really important question, especially given that, yeah, I'm usually a fully dressed man introducing about to be naked ladies and other feminine people, though of course there are boylesque performers. And I think that the answer breaks down into kind of 2 components. The first being how I kind of just behave generally on stage, and kind of the second being how I interact with and introduce burlesque performers. So I've made a conscious choice for my hosting character to be fairly asexual. I'm not that way in general life, but I think it's important as a man with the power of the microphone to not be a creep, to put it simply. I try and represent a very like joyful masculine persona. In fact, Master Cameron Eric Leon and I have kind of co-coined the term joyous masculinity.
I love that.
Which is our opposite idea towards toxic masculinity. And that's really what I try and bring to the stage. I try and be like this joyful, polite and gentle guy that's not talking about his dick or being a creep on stage. That's just no good. And then the second is the second part of my answer is how I interact directly with performers and how I introduce performers and outro performers as well. And to me, a big thing that I focus on is I don't ever sexualize performers unless they very, very explicitly tell me to, in which case I do, because I would not be doing my job.
Right.
Otherwise, I do not, because it's a burlesque show. People understand the performers are doing a fine job on their own, and instead I try and talk about the things that they've honed on their craft. If they're excellent at choreography, I talk about their choreography. If they rhinestoned an incredible costume, I talk about their incredible costume. I think there's so much to the art of burlesque that needs to be highlighted and commented on more than like, hey, titties. Like,
we can see them.
So yeah, I know. We all know they're there, right? Like, I don't need to point them out. We're all at the show.
Ian, looking back on your career from that first night at Evening of Sin to today being one half of Vermouth and Sane Presents, arguably one of Ottawa's most successful production houses, is there a point in your career that you would say was a defining moment or a turning point?
I think you were there for it. It was Vermouth and Sane's first ever show, Pinup Paradise. It was the first show that Victoria and I ever produced completely independently. We'd worked together with a couple other production teams before. But this one was all our own. We got our own venue. We cast the whole show ourselves. And then we sold out the house and made some fans that we have seen at every single Vermouth and Sane show since. It really felt like we had arrived to where we were supposed to be in the burlesque scene.
Right.
It was just
I remember that night just feeling on top of the world. The feeling of pulling up in the car and arriving to a show at a venue where we've never had a burlesque show before, and knowing it was a sold out show, it was just like this amazing tingling feeling. And you guys took really good care of us, and it was just fun the entire time through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a blast. I remember getting off stage that night and just immediately like a shake went up like my hands directly into my torso.
Just pure tingles.
And I could not go to sleep that night.
Did anyone sleep that night?
I don't know. Some of us certainly partied after.
I think I was one of the partiers.
Yeah. No, it was a very happy night for myself and for Victoria. And like we've kept it going since. I'm just so happy. Once this is all this staying inside business is over, I can't wait to get back to it.
And your shows are just very thoughtfully put together, and it feels very much like a production and a show rather than a bunch of individual artists kind of showing up. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Well, thank you so much. That's such a meaningful compliment. That's really what we try and do. And we work very hard at it. I would actually, I love being in the audience at burlesque shows as well. And I've always kind of wondered, like, what's it like to attend my own show? That would be a fun experience.
It is a fun experience. So, Ian, you are known for your incredible and very sparkly outfits. It takes a lot of confidence to wear stuff like that. Were you always this outgoing?
So when I started wearing my sparkly suits, it was because I wasn't confident and I wasn't outgoing. I originally started with the glitter beards and the rhinestone suits, kind of to distract from myself overall, because I didn't feel super confident about who I was. Yeah. To refer back to D&D, like I mentioned earlier, I call a lot of my suits suits of +5 charisma. Because I didn't have the confidence initially to do it. But then I started emceeing burlesque regularly, and I became more confident. I don't need the suits anymore. I've actually hosted without them several times. I've done burlesque type things. I have more confidence in my general life. because I put that armor on in the first place, and then learned that I didn't need it, I guess. Originally, I wasn't that confident, but now I am. Because I went up on stage, and people liked me for who I was and not just the suits and the sparkles.
Yeah, Ian, we like the suits, but we love Ian Sane.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, Ian, for our final question, I'm hoping that someone watching this video at home will see this and realize that they would like to get into hosting burlesque. What advice do you have for that person?
Well, I hope someone does get inspired to host some burlesque from this. That would be awesome. I'm always hoping more people show up. When I hear that there's a new host coming onto the scene, I always try and offer to take them out for a beer or a snack, just to like get to know them a little bit and offer them some advice that I've found helpful over the course of my career. I try and stick to 3 rules for hosting burlesque. And pretty much all of them are about being respectful, but in different ways. The first one is don't be horny on stage. Don't do it. No one needs to hear about your junk or how your junk feels about a performer or audience member or piece of set decoration. We don't need to hear it. We're not here for that. We're all fully aware of how sexual a burlesque show is. We don't need it made creepy or weird. My second rule for hosting, you should look like you belong on stage with burlesque performers. There is nothing in the world I hate to see more, at least at a burlesque show, than a performer in a costume that she or he or they have spent hundreds of dollars on, put hours into crafting and rhinestoning, just put a ton of work into. And then they're standing next to the host of the show, and he's in today's dirty jeans, a button-up, and a tie from Value Village. That's not respectful. It's incoherent, and it shouldn't be on stage. Like, if you're not going to dress to the level of the show, you shouldn't be in the show. That doesn't mean you have to wear a rhinestone suit like I do, or do a million crazy costume changes, but it does mean considering your appearance and making sure it matches.
A word.
For my third piece of burlesque advice that I like to offer is that, burlesque hosting advice that I like to offer is that when you are the host of a burlesque show, it is not about you. It's not about your bit or your quirky talent. It's about your ability to facilitate a show, to keep it moving, and if need be, stall with your 15 minutes of commentary, speaker blows up, or someone's costume undergoes a traumatic failure. That's when you do your bit. Otherwise, you should be keeping it brief so that your performer, who's in a 12-layer costume, doesn't die of dehydration from sweating backstage. Keep an outro brief. Keep your intro brief. Say something quick and funny in the middle, not 10 minutes in the middle.
So, Ian, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on Behind the Screens and let us all get to know you a bit better. It's been an amazing honor to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So before we go, it's time for the plug. So I know that you don't exactly have any shows to plug right now because of, quarantine circumstances, but I do hear you have a rhinestoning business.
I do. I do custom rhinestoning here in Ottawa. I've rhinestoned all my own suits, which you should be able to see up on my Instagram, along with a couple of the costumes I've done for performers around town. So if you're looking to make something sparkly, slide into my DMs, and I think I have fairly reasonable rates we can talk about.
Oh, amazing. And where can the people find you on social media?
So I have a Facebook page, Ian Sane -burlesque host. And I have an Instagram page for Sparkling Ian Sane. Though, if you want to stay really updated on what I'm doing, the best place to find out about my shows is at the Vermouth and Sane socials. I believe we have an Instagram account and a Facebook page that are curated by Victoria Vermouth, my co-producer. And that will have tons of information about our upcoming shows, as well as a bunch of pictures from our previous ones. If you're missing the feel of bright lights on a stage like I am.
I'm super excited that you were here today. I'm so glad you agreed to be on the show, and I can't wait to see what you do next, honestly.
Well, thanks, Anja. It was my pleasure being here. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest of the shows, even the ones I'm not in.
Me too. Me too. All right. Thanks so much, Ian.
All right. Thanks, Anja. Bye.